Hi, Maria Mandarino here, and today we are going to talk about lessons from Type 9, particularly in reference to the upcoming lunar eclipse, which is going to be happening tomorrow, the 17th of September, here in the US. So we're going to kind of put this in the context of that transit, because it does apply. So before we jump in, though, I would like to remind you, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. I am trying to meet the 500 mark by the end of the year, which looks like a pretty realistic goal. So if you would help me meet that goal, that would be fantastic. So also, please remember to like the episode, comment. These things really do help the algorithm and gets other people to see the channel who would otherwise not come upon it. So help me get this information out there. Okay. So today I'm going to talk about the lessons we can learn from Type 9, particularly going through this energy of the lunar eclipse. So currently we are, I mean, there's always stress in life, right? But this is kind of a stressful period right now. We're seeing that in people. We're seeing it all over, but we're seeing it in our immediate relationships. And that's kind of what I want to focus on right now. What's going on in your relationships where you see, or maybe you're the one bringing the energy of the Enneagram 9, the lower expressions I'm talking about tonight. So the narcotization, the numbing out, the checking out. Maybe you're the one doing it. Hopefully, if you're the one watching this episode, you're not the one doing it. But maybe you know someone in your life who is doing it, and maybe you're struggling with that. So I want to talk about that experience, and I want to talk about that experience in the context of the eclipse tonight. So, the people who show up and the people who don't show up, right? So when you're going through something difficult in life, obviously we all notice the people who show up. But sometimes there's a preponderance of the people who don't show up, and it's really tough when they're the people who usually do the showing up. And if you have a type 9 in your life who's close to you, and you know what it feels like for a 9 to show up, because the 9, we think of the 9 as merging and really connecting with people, and they really want to be present to someone. So when they are that person, when they're in that higher expression, and they have a good sense of the boundary between themselves and others, so they're merging, but merging in a healthy way. They're not losing themselves, right? So and they can keep a sense of what we call right action in the Enneagram, and knowing when it's time to do the right thing. That can feel like conflict for a 9, and that's usually where the avoidance comes in, and they try to move away from that. That's where the numbing out can come in. So when you're the person going through something difficult and you have a 9 in your life and you're used to them showing up and all of a sudden they're checking out, it can be distressing, upsetting, confusing. Okay. So, and you can feel abandoned, ignored, not seen, all of those unpleasant experiences when you're also going through this unpleasant, difficult time, whatever you're going through, whatever stressor is going on in your life, right? And then you also have this feeling of not being seen by the person, and whether they're a 9 or not. This is why I call this the lessons from the 9, because I believe we have all 9 types in us, but one is going to step out in front. That's the type we lead with, but we're not void of any of the other experiences. My personal belief is that when certain powerful transits are happening, um, that correlate, and it's not a direct correlation with the Enneagram because we have 12 houses, we have 9 types, right? So it's not a direct correlation, but there are threads that we can pull from the astrology through the Enneagram. So when we're going through certain transits, certain type 9 behaviors start to show up in the people around us and within ourselves too. Okay, so be aware of, again, you may be doing the checking out yourself. Doesn't necessarily mean you're a 9. I think if you lead with a 9, and I'd love to hear you, comments about this. If you do lead with a 9, are you narcotizing a little more right now? Are you numbing out a little more? Or if you have a 9 close to you, are they numbing out a little more? But in this episode, I want you to think more of the bigger picture. It might not be a 9 in your life who's numbing out or checking out maybe. So who's there for you, who's not? Start paying attention. And again, pay attention if you're the one, not being present. So I want to talk about the eclipse before we go too far. So lunar eclipse in Pisces, okay, conjoined with Neptune. I think they're one degree apart. So, and Saturn is real close to that transit. Saturn being kind of structured, tough, more rigid, reforming kind of an energy. I think of Saturn as being very type 1, or in the Eastern 5 element system, I think of Saturn as being kind of metal. So structured, tough, reforming energy, right? But we have this moon in Pisces conjoined with Neptune, right? So Neptune we associate with confusion, lack of definition. And these are kind of like, look at this as the Enneagram, looking at the lower aspect of types. So these are kind of the lower vibrational qualities of Neptune. So we think of more confusion, lack of definition, that which is formless, almost vaporized, right? That kind of energy of vaporization. Just kind of, they're here and then poof, Neptune's not there, right? So this is the energy that's going on right now in this eclipse. So it's an eclipse in Pisces, which we already associate with the dreamy, the formless, the more spiritual, the more esoteric, the kind of more intangible, right? And then we bring in the Neptune qualities of confusion, lack of definition, kind of being vaporized. Think of the fog and the mist, right? You can't see anything. There's no definition. There's no clarity. Okay. And when you're going through something tough and stressful, most of us appreciate clarity from the people around us, the people, again, that show up versus the people who don't show up. So, eclipses kind of bring us challenges. So you may be going through a tougher time. If you're going through a tough time in general, you may feel that energy pump up right now because of this eclipse. And that's the time where you feel you need your people most, the people that you've always been able to rely on. And all of a sudden, you don't know where they went. They're standing right in front of you, possibly, but they ain't there. And be aware of what that's bringing up in you. So, again, 9 types, there's 9 ways to view how that's going to feel. And I'm not going to get into that in this episode because that could actually be like a whole class. But assuming you know your type, you're watching this, you probably know your type. What do you do? Where do you go when your person or your people check out and numb out because they're going through something and they're not communicating, and there's this transit going on where everything is vague and foggy and boggy, and we don't, we're in the vapor, we're in the mist, right? What is that bringing out within your Enneagram? And within your astrological type, if you're that skilled in your astrology, that's because that's in this too, right? So what I'm trying to say here is hard times, tough astrology. And if you're going through a harder time than normal, you may feel particularly abandoned by certain people in your life. So here's what we know about the 9s. And 9s, so we're all going through a hard time. So let's put some perspective on that, right? So we're all going through a hard time. And type 9s don't like hard times if they're going to look like conflict, especially, right? So they're going to run from that. We already mentioned that. So what 9s will do is they'll disengage in the relationship if they sense that something might feel like conflict. Not just difficulty, but difficulty that might bring conflict or a conflicted conversation or something they don't want to talk about. They're going to disengage. They're going to do that checking out, that numbing out, that narcotization. So if they sense, and I think this is important, if they sense conflict in what you're going through, like if they're picking up a vibe off of you that your hard stuff might end up looking like a conflicting conversation, they're pretty perceptive people. And again, we've got this Neptunian thing, so, Neptune, Pisces, spiritual energy, they might be able to tap into that faster than you even realize you're giving that off. And they'll vaporize quicker than you might imagine. So if they're sensing conflict through your trouble, that might be part of why they're just not, they've already disengaged from the relationship. Okay. So in that relationship, they'll go away, and they'll go away until they feel the conflict, the risk of conflict isn't present anymore. But what's happening to you in the meantime is you feel that you don't matter. And there's this whole thing that can kind of emerge from this. And they're going away, and you're possibly not engaging in it. And again, this is type driven. So if you're a 9 going through this, you're going to disengage also, right? So this can start to really get messy, this energy. And this is where the Enneagram meeting the astrology like this can really be tough. And if we work our Enneagram, and if we work our astrology to, the higher good, we can make some positive changes here in relationships. So here's what's tough about it, though. If somebody's really coming from the low side of the type, now again, if they're a 9, you're going to feel this in a larger way, I think. And if they have some, if they have some placements in Pisces, you may see it more readily as well, more readily even if they're a 9 as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see that, actually, if you see that overlap in people, or again, in yourself, in your own chart. But then checking out in the 9 when you need them most, again, assuming you're going through something more stressful, a little more tough, you've got some challenges going on, your person or your people are kind of checked out, right? So I call this, for the 9, for the unhealthy 9, it's a tough thing to hear, but having been through it in my own life with some 9s around me, it's a polite form of suicide. And they have no idea how violent it feels, because they think, what do we call the 9, right? The peacemaker, the mediator, right? They don't want to do anything that seems violent, right? And yet they're checking out when you need them most, when you need them to step in, and they step out, and they narcotize, and they just shut down. It feels violent when you're the one who's used to them being there, and you know how powerful it feels when a 9 steps in, or when that Piscean energy steps into higher consciousness, and they have that higher spirituality, and then all of a sudden the fog takes over, and you don't know where they went. Whether we're looking at the Neptunian piece of that, or whether or the Piscean piece of that, or the Enneagram 9 piece of that, you know what that feels like. No matter what type you lead with, you know what it feels like when that person has been there, and all of a sudden there's a void, and you don't know why or where it came from. On their end, it's feeling like conflict, it's feeling like discomfort. So the thing that they do in their unhealthy state is they go away. And again, it feels violent to the person on the receiving end. The last thing that the 9 wants anybody to feel, by the way. So in that going away from you, important to remember, they're also forgetting themselves in that moment. So they forget you, and they're also forgetting themselves. But what you're left with, if you're the one going through the hard, tough thing right now, you're left with feeling unimportant, unseen, ignored, and unsupported. And depending on what type you lead with, if you're the person that's always there for the other, abandonment feels a whole lot tougher. No one likes to feel abandoned. Out of any of the 9 types, nobody loves to feel abandoned. Even, by the way, even the 5s, which most people think they don't mind feeling abandoned. No one loves abandonment. Abandonment is hurtful. So yeah, So we have we have these two scenarios going on simultaneously, and everybody's caught up in their own experience. The nine not wanting to feel conflict and wanting to just go away and wait until this blows over. And the other person, again, no matter what type you're leading with, feeling unacknowledged, abandoned, uncared for, unseen, all of those things. So what do you do? What can you do? Okay. Um, at the Enneagram level, depending on the type that you lead with, um, I would say acknowledging it first, and that might mean different things to different people. Acknowledging it might mean journaling. Some people going within, um, to find the thread of what is going on for you. Looking at the somatic piece of what's going on. Where are you feeling this in your body? Where is this abandonment taking up space in your body? In the Enneagram, we think of the head types, the heart types, and the body types. So play with that. I tell people to do that through journaling, but whatever your experience, maybe it's just going for a walk, and doing your processing that way. But I think number one is acknowledging it and acknowledging it within yourself. Um, Acknowledging it possibly to a spiritual director, and that's part of what I do, right? I have these spiritual conversations with people who are usually Enneagram informed, and we talk about, like, where is this hitting for you? Why is it hitting there? What does this feel like that has happened before for you? How does it reflect your experience, your relationship with your creator? When have you felt abandoned by your creator? I mean, that's a huge discussion that we take on in spiritual direction. Because, God, our creator, whatever word you want to put on it, light, the universe. This is something that is intangible. And it's hard to be in relationship with that which is formless, right? So this may bring up times where you feel that, God wasn't there through something difficult in your life, the way this person who you count on is not currently there, right? So that's a conversation for a spiritual director. So that's another way to acknowledge what you're going through, with the people who are not present to you during a hard time. It might be appropriate to voice it to the person if they're able to receive it. So if somebody is really, really shut down, they may not be able to do this, to have that conversation. And I'm going to talk about that part in a moment. But if you're falling into the trap of expecting somebody to know that you need them right now, maybe you do need to say it. Maybe they won't receive it, but this is all in discernment. Knowing your type, knowing their type, understanding what's going on in their life too, because this eclipse is happening to everybody. So there may be some triggers there too for this person. But maybe it's okay to voice it, and not expect them to read your mind, or not expect them to understand your needs, right? But voicing it does come with risks, because you don't know how you'll be met. The person may lash out. Nines are also known for having, anger, repressed anger, but that may emerge. It's not what we typically see, but when a nine's anger does emerge, it's noticeable. And again, this person may not even be a nine, but may be behaving with some of these nine behaviors right now. So voicing it, you have to know, you have to know the person that you're dealing with. What is voicing it going to do in this moment? And it may be, and this is the other way of looking at voicing it, may be better to wait for a more neutral time when you are not feeling so energetically charged, when you're not feeling so hurt, when you're not caught up in the abandonment, and when they're not caught up in the fear of conflict. So it may be worth, maybe even setting a date on your calendar of, got to have this conversation with this person. because it's too easy for us to lose each other. So maybe better to wait for a more neutral time when you're not feeling abandoned and when they're not feeling such fear around conflict or aversion to conflict. And the other possibility is, when I say look at your calendar, is to, also think of the transits that might be coming up that might be better to be having these kinds of conversations where there might be a more open time in the chart to do this. So back to the astrology, I would like to also point out that whatever house this eclipse is happening in, and there's going to be two of them, there's going to be a solar eclipse coming up next month. But whatever eclipse this is happening in your chart is the theme that you're going to see this playing out. This person narcotizing, checking out, not being present to you. There's going to be a certain theme around it, depending on what astrological house this eclipse is happening for you. And again, remember, Neptune is right next to the moon, conjoined the moon, right? And Saturn's just a few degrees off of that, right? So it's going to feel harsh. It's going to feel restrictive. It's going to feel cold. Saturn, we associate Saturn with cold, cold and contracting, right? So cold and contracting to me feels isolating, right? So there's also a level of understanding and maybe acceptance that you can gain from this, and understanding that the transits they're a phase. It's part of a rhythm. It's part of a cycle, right? It's not forever. It's a snapshot of now, and it may be a painful now. For you, the person that's kind of abandoned by this person who has checked out. But I think important to also say they're going through their own pain in some kind of silent, confusing, nebulous, Neptunian, Piscean way. So not to negate what you're going through in this, feeling of being abandoned by your person. Understand that this transit doesn't happen in a vacuum. So I hate to say there's reasons for everything that's happening right now, but there kind of are. So be present to yourself, particularly when you're alone and the person is not there for you, or your people are not there for you because they're going through their own Neptunian fog right now. Be the person for yourself right now. It's hard. It's hard, and show up for yourself as best you can, and have the hard conversations when it's best to have them. My guess is it'll probably be better to have these conversations later and not now. But if you can handle them now, and the person can receive the information now, and you discern that that's the right thing to do it. And set your intention to do it. Don't do it in a reactive way. Do it with intentionality. Use this energy for the higher good, because again, the higher octave of Neptune is deep spirituality and consciousness. So if you can use that, if you can catch that wave, do so. Okay. So that's all I have for you today. I think it's plenty enough because it is kind of heavy stuff. I do again want to remind you to remember to like, comment, subscribe, share. Also want to remind you that I do offer a free discovery call on spiritual directions. So if you don't know what a spiritual director is, I'd be happy to chat with you about whether that would be appropriate for you. So there is the opportunity to do a free discovery call. All this is on my website. I'll have it in the show notes too, mariamandarino.com. You can sign up for the call there. I also do offer Enneagram typing and spiritual direction. You don't have to do both. You don't have to know your Enneagram type to be in spiritual direction with me, but it's most of what I do, and I do also talk a little bit astrology in my spiritual direction sessions if people are open to that. If they're not, we don't go there. And I do chart readings as well. So this month, for the month of September, I am offering $50 off of a chart. So if that's something that you would like to do, reach out to me, because the way my website's set up right now, I don't have a way to do that with a coupon code. So just shoot me an email through the website and I would be happy to get that on the schedule for you. Okay, so again, thank you so much for being here. Try to write out this transit as best you can. And again, think of the higher octave of spirituality and consciousness, because we can use that energy with intentionality. It's not much of what I'm seeing out there right now. I'm seeing people going through really deep pain and confusion and frustration in that confusion. So just know, if you're going through that and your people are kind of checked out and don't seem to care right now, they're going through an experience as well. And it's just a lot of what's out there right now. It's not random. This is really part of a um, greater experience humanity is going through right now. And I like to take the stance of, it means it's going to bring us to a better place. It's going to bring us to a higher level of energy, of type, of consciousness. So again, it's all intention. So thank you again for being here. Reach out. Again, I'll have the website in the show notes for you. And best wishes to you on the eclipse. Bye.